睇先。我哋今日嘅議程。好，各位大家好。咁我哋
Good morning, members. We have a quorum. Now, this is the meeting of the Subcommittee on Minimum Wage, Third Ordinance, Amendment of Schedule 3, Notice 2015, and Employment Ordinance, Amendment 9 Schedule, Notice 2015. This is the third meeting. This meeting is to last an hour from 11:15 to from the 11 to 12. Now, we already covered the minimum wage notice last time. And what's left is the Employment Ordinance Amendment of 9th Schedule Notice. Members still have some comments on this notice, so they would like a discussion today. That's why we believe 1 hour should be sufficient. Last time, at the last meeting, there were two issues. Dr. Kwok-Ka-Ki asked the administration for the number, right? The 13,300. How many, right? I believe the administration provided similar information before. Anyway, we could check with the administration. And then Mr. Tommy Cheung asked the administration to consider not using May or June for the earnings survey, but rather you should take the information for October or November for the survey. Anyway, let's welcome the administration representatives. We have Ms. Mabel Lee, Assistant Commissioner for Labour, Mr. Desmond Hull, Mr. William Mack, Chief Labour Officer, and also Mr. Desmond Hull, Principal Economist, Economic Analysis and Business Facilitation Unit of the Financial Secretary's Office. And then from the Department of Justice, Mr. Jonathan Loke, Government Counsel. Welcome all. Now, administration, please. Can we go back to the issues raised by two members last time? Please respond. Thank you, Madam Chair. On Dr. Kwok's question, that is, if the new upper limit is $13,300 per month, and how many employees will be covered? In 2013, according to the annual earnings and hours survey, for those earning less than $13,300, there were about 1.398 million workers. So that's the information requested. And then on Mr. Tommy Cheung's question about the survey period, can I invite the principal economist to respond, please? Yes, after the last meeting, I raised the issue with the Census and Statistics Department at once. Now, it's about the peak periods and the quiet periods of different trades. I talked to colleagues. So for different trades, actually, they may have different peak or quiet cycle. So when we, of course, we made reference to international experience. And then in our last written response, we said that for what would the special factors be in quarter, first, second, third, or fourth quarter that may influence the year-on-year comparison. In any case, the Census and Statistics Department has heard Mr. Tommy Cheung's views, and they will continue to consider changing the survey reference period. Okay, please consider this in your next round of amendments. Now, the floor is open to members. First round, 4 members: Tommy Cheung, Lee Cheuk-yan, Tan Ka-Pil, Kwok-Ka-Ki, Fernando Cheung. 5 members. 5 minutes each, please. Mr. Tommy Cheung. Thank you, Madam Chair. I find it most regrettable that the secretary for ruining our long-term economic prospects is absent. Now, I don't get paid, but I'm a wageless employer. We work so hard on Valentine's Day. We work so long. We work so hard. Ben, today the secretary is not here for this meeting, and I have to dash to the other meeting. It's not a nice subject to talk about, column barrier, because we're approaching Chinese New Year, but still we have to do our work. Now, I'm glad to hear that many years ago we mentioned this May reference period. Now, the pandemocrats, have been talking about universal social 20, 30 years, and they still keep talking about it. So, therefore, I'm not going to shut up either. I'm going to keep talking about it. Now, the peak seasons or low seasons, yes, I think you could hide behind seasons in doing your work, but which is the best quarter? Maybe you say the second quarter is the best. But we believe you should look at months rather than quarters. Now, for the economy in Hong Kong, now May, June are the worst months. July is when things start to turn for the better. That's not what I said. The financial sector talks about that. And then because May is after people have paid tax, and before it gets hot, people won't buy with summer clothing. So those are the worst months. That's why we must not deceive ourselves. We have to find the right data. Now, May, you pick May. So in the following year, that is in 2016, May, when the Minimum Wage Commission has to consider the figures, you will supply 2015 figures to the Commission, and that would not reflect the actual situation, because you take so long to work out the figures, and then perhaps you are able to respond to the labor unions for call for an annual review, and then you supply annual figures. But it doesn't mean that if you make the period shorter, then there could be an annual review. The Liberal Party already stated this at the last meeting. For minimum wage, it's not necessary to have fixed review period. If there's a need to review it, we can review it. If there's no need, we don't need to review it. Why must it be an annual review or biannual review? So I think you have to go back and consider this. You shouldn't just look at historic data or statistics over a reference period. Because figures you provide to the Minimum Wage Commission are already lagging behind. That may not benefit employees, nor might it benefit employers. It really depends on the market. So we want figures that closely reflect the actual situation, and that would be the best way. A second point. Now, I know you do a lot of statistics, and from the point of view of statistical studies, there has to be an element of randomness. So in a basket, you shouldn't select what to look at. So you consider that to be the right approach from statistical point of view. But then when we want to track a trend, let's say for the fast food business, there are quite a few fast food groups, and then there are many Hong Kong-style cafes which have been in operation for years. If we want to track trends, then shouldn't we go back to the same eating establishments every year? That is, last year around this time, what was the wage level, and what's the wage level now? What did you pay before, and what do you pay now? Only then could you see the trend. It's not just about statistics. It's about being able to see the trend. I still have less than a minute left. I'll see how the chairperson would deal with it. Let me come to my third question. Now, in the paper this time round, you said the impact is just about 0.1 something % on wage level. Now, you didn't do it before every year, and this time round, the estimate, let's say when compared to the estimate a year later when minimum wage has been implemented, is it true that the increase is so minimal, or could it be higher? Now, I'm not saying that you are doctoring figures. I'm just saying you ought to stay professional as you are. And so if you've done an estimate, but at the end, when minimum wage is increased, what exactly is the impact? So you have to tell people. That's all from me, Madam Chair. So they have to tell you how professional you are. Next, Mr. Lee Cheuk-Yan. I agree with Mr. Tommy Cheung on the first sentence. That is, he expressed regret that the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Mr. Matthew Cheung, is not here. He said this secretary. I said this secretary is stalling benefits for employees, but of course, Tommy Cheung said he's the secretary ruining the long-term economic prospects for Hong Kong. Anyway, well, let's say he ruins things. And what he's ruined is the annual review of minimum wage. So that's what the Secretary for Labour and Welfare does. Now, we demanded annual review. At one point, I thought it could be passed, but then at the end, it became biannual review again. But of course, as you know, initially there was not even a review period, and then we asked, we moved an amendment to do annual review, and eventually they went for biannual review to counteract our proposal. So now we have a review every 2 years. That means for grassroots workers, they only get a wage increase every 2 years. I said last time the administration didn't do this homework that I've asked for. That is for government's contracted workers. Have you done a survey on their wage increase position? What I understand is that they only get a wage increase every 2 years. So I think you should do a survey on government's contracted workers, contract workers. And I think you have to come back and report sometime what sort of protection is there for the workers in outsourced contracts from government, because maybe even your contractors are ill-treating your workers. But I don't think you can answer me. I don't think you've done the homework yet. Anyway, coming back to annual review, I've always stressed that the Census and Statistics Department is not supporting your work. Rather, the department stalls the whole process of the statistical work. I recall when this exercise started, I criticized why we had to wait so long for the statistical figures to come out for, say, April to June. Why do we have to wait so long for that quarter figures? And then we'll have to wait till, say, January, February, or anyway, you can clarify the time frame. But anyway, after I made the criticism, I remember the administration said it would take longer the first time round. But no, they eventually find that for the second round or third round, it took as long. So I think the Census and Statistics Department has to support your work, even if we take October to December, as suggested by Mr. Tommy Cheung. Now, what I'm interested in any review, I won't debate the period. But anyway, if you could do the figures for April to June soon enough, then in July we could consult, and then September decision could be made, and then by October it could go back to the council. So it takes just exactly 1 year. But every time when you do the figures, that's a slippage sort of. And so the figures lag behind the time frame. And if we do a review every 2 years, of course, things are far behind. They can't keep up with the latest developments. So my question for the Census and Statistics Department is whether you could compress your work cycle. You promised me to compress the cycle, but you did not do it.
Who will answer? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your question. Just then you mentioned about Secretary who can't be here today. Well, I'd like to clarify, because the Secretary has got other prior appointments for today, so he couldn't make it. He's got other prior appointments already related to welfare. So he can't really find time to come. So I'd like to apologize on his behalf. It's not for other reasons. It's just because of his other prior appointments only. And secondly, Mr. Lee mentioned about studying outsourced work, by the government and the wage increases, whether there will be an increase every 2 years. On this issue, we will ask the relevant department to look into it. As for the Census Department's study and the time frame involved, let me give you some objective facts here. In the past, say in 2013, the survey in 2013, the period is from May to June. In the March the following year, the results will be announced. So the time gap is about 8 months. So that's quite a long time, and that proves that you promised me to compress the period, and yet now I'd like to find out why the Census Department said that it would take a long time the first time, and then how come after that the series exercises that follow would take the same amount of time? So I'd like an answer on why it took so long for the Census Department to do so. Initially, they said it wouldn't take that long, but now it turns out it will take 8-9 months. Next one is Mr. Tang Ka-piu. Yes, once again, I will urge, and I hope that you will respond as well, that when the Minimum Wage Commission discusses the review of the minimum wage on a yearly basis, what impact that could be. And I'd like to see a study done on that. And as Mr. Lee Chen just said, we'd like them to find out under what conditions and how the government would operate to facilitate having a review every 1 year. Just then you mentioned ripple-off effects, and now we're explicitly asking for a study into the impact of 1 year, a review every year, and to look into its impact. And secondly, when do you think the Minimum Wage Commission would begin operation? Who will decide when it will meet again, and what is the timetable involved? And thirdly, similar to what I just asked, there's the media reports that before 2011, before the Minimum Wage Commission began operation, when the labor and official and the employers and academics form a platform to negotiate the amount, we've had the third such exercise already, and the fourth one is coming up. More than half of the members of the Minimum Wage Commission have served for 6 years. And so in the coming months or years ahead, would you appoint new members to the Commission? But we're talking about a negotiation platform. So if all members are new, so how can we ensure that things can be done? So what's your take on that? Assistant Commissioner, thank you, Chairman and Mr. Tang. Well, on the review on a yearly basis, during our subcommittee meeting, members raised this, and the government did respond. And the government stance is very clear. We do think that the minimum wage has only been implemented for a limited period of time, so we should maintain having a review every 2 years to adopt a flexible approach. And secondly, on the Minimum Wage Commission and its workflow, under the relevant ordinance, the law requires that when the chief executive requested a review of the commission, then the commission will carry out a review. At this subcommittee meeting last time, we did provide the explanation that is the chief executive can ask for review of the commission in accordance with the law. And ultimately, the commission will monitor the minimum wage level and the implementation of the law. With approval from LegCo, then the new minimum wage level will come into effect in May this year. Of course, we'll see what impact or what the result will be after its implementation. And Mr. Tang also mentioned about the existing members of the Minimum Wage Commission and their terms of service, how many have or whether they've exceeded 6 years. Let me do some clarifications now. Early this month, the government announced that in this fiscal year, the appointments of the members of the Commission will end by the end of this month. So early February, the government has announced a new lineup of members, and the new Commission members will assume office in March for a term of 2 years. And those members, I'd like to clarify, there used to be a professional minimum wage commission. And before, the minimum wage law was enacted. So we did have a temporary or professional executive body. But now what we have is a statutory commission, statutory body. So that's different from the one before. So from March 1st, when the new members assume office, so when the appointment begins for a 2-year period, then we won't have any members who've served for more than 6 years. So all the members will not have served for 6 years. We understand that all of the government, normally for government commissions, members will serve for only 6 years, the most. And for any new appointments, we will also take that rule into account. So in other words, including those who serve on the professional body, that would be a period of 8 years. But how can you ensure stability when the existing members are replaced later on? Just then you said you didn't do any study and you said that the current mode of operation is good. But you haven't told me, will you carry out any study on this mode of operation? Yes, I will take on board your opinion. Next one, Kwakaki. Well, there's a reason why I asked for this statistics. You know that with the after the wage came into effect, there were 131,908 1.3198 million people who still, trapped in poverty and who's below poverty line. So this minimum wage law, I can see, it's not so much for the labor sector. The poverty line, as you know, actually is used in a way that, as the Chief Executive Sivalan promised, to ease the poverty problem. I'm not saying that we will not let him do his work, but you can see when every civil servant, statutory body have their pay increase every year, then why is it that the grassroots workers who are getting minimum wage will only have their pay increase every 2 years? So I'd like to ask the senior officials seated here, maybe they are getting a lot of money every month. So I don't understand why civil servants have to pay review every year, and yet the grassroots workers only have to pay review 2 years. So administration, who would like to respond? Mr. Ha, would you like to respond, or Commissioner? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kwok. As for the statutory requirement now for a review of the wage every 2 years, I know there are members who ask for a review every year, but on several occasions I've explained that minimum wage actually does have an impact on society, economy, and employment. And it's stated in the law that it's up to the Minimum Wage Commission to conduct review and also to comply with certain prescribed purposes, including forestalling wage level from dropping too much, and also preventing loss of jobs, and also maintaining competitiveness. Just then, members also mentioned that civil servants have their salary reviewed every year. But after all, we're talking about two different things. Civil servants' pay involves only one employer, the Hong Kong SAR government. But minimum wage does have an impact, or it could have wide impact on the society. For example, with labor-intensive industries or low-pay jobs, sectors with more low-pay jobs, SMEs and so forth, we need to consider the impact on them. And minimum wage also involves employers actually, enhancing, or increasing their operating costs. So the products or services provided by the employers could have an impact on other people, particularly retirees, or even, costs can be increased in terms of higher management fees. So we do need to strike a balance. after all, minimum wage has been put in place for 3 years, and we've only got limited experience. So at this stage, we think that it's best to keep the practice of having review every 2 years. Well, Chairman, of course, I'm not satisfied with the response. Given your logic, that means you can only actually you have double standards, in other words. So just then you said there could be impact on prices. You know that rents and property values are the two areas that have gone up much or the most in value. Can you tell me, after the implementation of the wage, how has it impacted operating costs? Is it costs in terms of property values or rents or what? Thank you, Mr. Kwok. I think when we analyze the impact on enterprises, we did analyze the structural costs. I'm talking about SMEs. Well, for SMEs, in every sector, we do take note of the impact on them. In Chapter 4 of the minimum wage report, there is a graph that showed that in 2012, compared to 2000, this is before the implementation of minimum wage, the operating costs of various sectors, what led to the rise in the operating costs. In the table 4.12, you can see that of the 15 low-pay sectors, which are more vulnerable to wage increase or rental increase. And I think members of this committee would be very clear about the analysis involved in that table. Thank you. Next one is Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. Last time, we raised concern about, government's claim that the minimum wage is here not to avoid wage level from dropping too low. But for the disabled, wage would be less for them because employers have to cut costs in, hiring them. Disabled people actually are making less money than what is promised by minimum wage. The government's paper said that in response to our concern, particularly in response to my concern that whether the government can subsidize the gap in wages given to disabled people, that is regardless of their ability, disabled people can make a lot less than what you think is low wages. Well, I don't think employers will suffer if we do that, because if you think that the current mechanism is not to reduce, the incentive for employers to hire the disabled, and if you want to, maintain the balance, I think you should provide wage subsidy. And you said it because of the consideration for major policies, disabled and other vulnerable groups should be. But you did say that the government policy or objective is not to provide, the wage subsidy for the disabled and other vulnerable groups in line with major policy considerations. But I don't know what your logic is. Maybe is it because of the way the Chinese is written? And you did also say that the government cannot assess the public expenditure involved in providing wage subsidy as the relevant statistics on persons with disabilities earning less than SMW are not available. But that's strange to me. We ensure that the law requires that everyone who works needs to be protected by minimum wage. So you do need to conduct some kind of productivity assessment for anyone. So this productivity assessment is something dealt with by the Bureau. And for every case, once the assessment is done, you do have the figures involved, for any actually reductions in wages or what. So on the March 26, 2014 meeting, the secretary, who is not here today, did give us some detailed statistics. So why would you say that there are no statistics available? I can actually work out the sum very clearly for you. In 2011, 12, 13, you did give us the statistics altogether. About 300 people there. We're talking about 300 people who actually went through the productivity assessment in the past 3 years. Of them, those who were not given the minimum wage made up the majority. So why would you say that you didn't have any statistics? How could you not have statistics?
係
Would like to respond, please, from the administration? Assistant Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Cheung, for your question. 2 points. Dr. Cheung, you mentioned that in 2014 you asked asked a question at the council meeting. That's slightly different to what's mentioned here in paragraph 11 of the paper, because your 2014 question was about after productivity assessment was done, the productivity level arrived at. So at that time, the administration's response to the question was the findings of the productivity level after the productivity assessment, and that's what the percentage was about. And now here at this subcommittee, Dr. Cheung, at the first meeting, you asked the administration to provide information about the number of employees earning minimum wage. So those are 2 separate issues. Because the other question, your earlier question, was on the findings of the productivity assessment. And after the assessment is done, the employer may not pay less than the relevant level. They could pay higher, and indeed some have paid more. So those are 2 separate issues. Another point, for employees with disabilities, they've gone through productivity assessment, the findings are out, but some employees may have opted for the transitional arrangement. They have not yet done the assessment because, let's say, there were already employees with disabilities unemployment at the time of the commencement of the minimum wage. They might choose not to do that assessment, so they chose to keep the wage lower than the minimum wage level that they were being paid at the time. So there was a transitional period. Of course, they may choose not to opt, but of course, starting from May 2015, they will have to be paid the minimum wage. Now, for this group of employees, the law does not stipulate a deadline as to when they would do the assessment. So that's why there is a group of employees before May 2011. They opted for the transitional arrangement. They have not yet done the assessment all this time, and they've kept their original wage level. And when they opted for the transitional arrangement, they did not have to declare to the administration. So for this group of employees, they haven't gone through assessment, so we don't have any information on the wage level. So that's why in our last paper, we responded to Dr. Cheung's question to say that the CNSD did a survey in 2013, but at that time, they did not collect information about the hourly wage for persons with disabilities. So that's why we were not able to provide the number of persons with disabilities earning wages below the minimum wage. Just one more point. Can you provide the transitional figures? You know, those who've opted for transitional arrangement, could you provide the number of cases? Dr. Cheung, as I just explained, before May 2011, some employees with disabilities opted for the transitional arrangement. They did not have to inform the government or the Labour Department. So that's why we do not have any figures on those who've opted for transitional arrangement. How many have informed the Labour Department? Did anyone inform the Labour Department? No. It's only after they've done the assessment, then we have the figures. How many have done the assessment then? Yes, for those who've done the assessment, we have the figure. As at the end of January this year, there were 246 assessment cases completed. Or rather, 420 cases. Could you provide the figures that Dr. Cheung asked for? Now, Dr. Cheung asked for persons with disabilities earning below the statutory minimum wage. Then we will have to ask the Census and Statistics Department to consider whether they could do this in the next round of survey. We could pass on Dr. Cheung's view to the CNSD. They'll see if they could include that in the next round of survey. Yes, please ask them to do so, because they only do the survey once every 5 years. But then for the wage of persons with disabilities, they could do a special study. So please ask them to do so. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. We'll pass on your views to the CNSD. Okay, members, on the Employment Ordinance Notice 2015. Any more comments, please? No? Can I ask this? Legal advisor. Are there any questions with the Chinese and English text? Thank you, Madam Chair. I've gone through the text. There's no problem with the English and the Chinese version. Now, the monthly pay ceiling is $20,300 to $13,300 per month. Anything else? The legislative timetable. Members, if you wish to amend the subsidiary legislation, you have to give 5 clear days of notice, okay? That means latest by the 11th of March, because for the 18th of March, that's the end of the scrutiny period. And I will submit a report to the host committee on the 27th of February. Okay? Anything else from the Secretariat? Then the meeting is adjourned and the subcommittee has completed its work. Thank you very much.